What I wanted to do is show you some of the things that I've been doing during this COVID-19 on my off moments when I'm not at the table and working on grading assignments, making assignments, emailing. One of the things I've been doing is that if we had class the first day after spring break, what I traditionally do is I go over what I call swarm season. I usually have a thing on my board. Some of you have seen that, your older students. And I go over what a bee swarm is, because this is the time of year when they divide. And so just recently I got one of my first bee swarms, actually about 2.5 weeks ago, and then we went through a cold spell at Bryan College. There was one there in a tree about 15 feet in the air, so I was able to put a step ladder underneath in the box, like you see there, one of them underneath, and I was able to put the swarm in there. But that was 3 weeks ago. So now I want to go in there, and I'm going to be helping teach you some things about beekeeping, as well as for my wife's students as well. She teaches at RCA, and she teaches younger kids, so forgive me if I'm using younger terminology and different things. But I want to look at, we're going to see if we can find the queen, see if we can find the drones, which are the male bees that are more numerous this time of year for fertilizing young new queens, and then also see if we can find the queen. Sometimes that's easier than others, and so that's sort of what we're getting ready to do. So I'll sort of be breaking you down how I get into a hive. Take it from there. Okay, so in order to calm the bees and make them a little bit calmer, we use a bee smoker. I use pine needles, they're nice and smoky. And so I'm going to try and get my fire going here a little bit. Move over here downwind. A little bit of a windy day for doing this, but sometimes you just can't pick your days. You smoke them, it sort of distracts them and makes them sort of want to go get, they dive their head in honey. It's sort of like when you get under stress and you go for a thing of ice cream or snacks or something, which a lot of us have been doing a lot lately. Due to this whole change in life with the corona situation, and a lot of us have changed a lot of our habits, and I know myself and my family, we find we're not eating the same way and same routines, different times, different types of food, convenience. We don't want to go to the store as often, so all those things have definitely changed our lives in the midst of things. So this is sort of like my project, like you guys have been doing projects, so I'm trying to share a little bit of my life with you. So I think I got that going pretty good. This is, in case I get in there and find some frames that, this is new foundations. These aren't real new, they were in a hive, but they haven't been. So you put it like this, and then the bees will eventually fill it out and make it like that. So I have these combs that are last year comb, but they're still, this gives them a head start. So I want to give them this if I can, because they will quickly lay eggs in it and brood, and they won't have to take their energy to build comb. It takes a pound of honey to make 1 ounce of comb. So the more I can help them along the way, the faster they will build and get me more honey in this given year. So that's what I'm getting ready to do. These are some main hive tools. Some very worn out gloves, getting ready to replace those this year. A bee brush, which you use to gently encourage them one way or another. And a hive tool, which is the standard shaped tool for prying and opening, and sometimes nails, stuff like that. Very important tool because things are stuck together with a substance called propolis. Some of you did organic chemistry. That comes from a substance that's on the leaves, surface of leaves, and they use that to stick it together, but it's also their drugstore. It has lots of different proteins in it that help actually work like medicine for them. It looks like wax, but it's actually not. It's quite sticky. And then there's also the wax, and the wax is also a organic substance that comes from their abdomens. They secrete little scales to make all the wax. And so there's lots of chemistry involved in beekeeping. The queen communicates with all her bees through things called pheromones, another specific organic chemical unique to each queen based on her genetics. So that's a few things in the area of chemistry that definitely relate. And when it comes to physics, since some of you are in physics, honeycomb has been found in its structure and shape. Here's a better one. For its weight, it can hold more volume structurally and strongly than any other shape. So that hexagonal shape is very important. As a matter of fact, it's even used inside of some structures like airplane wings to give strength to the airfoils inside. So we're getting ready to go in and see what we find. Alright, so I'm smoking the hive to calm them down a little bit. And I'm going to let the smoke go in the way the wind goes across them. I'm going to put this up between me and the sun, because I wouldn't want it over here because then my shadow would go across it. That tends to make them a little bit more nervous. You can see all the propolis I was talking about. That's not wax, that's actually all tree sap from leaves. I try and leave that on there to some degree because that's their drugstore. They're finding more and more that's very important. There's usually quite a few bees, not too many this time on the lid, but I do put it right here. That way they can climb back in the hive just a little more easily. This is a honey super that I've already put on. Doesn't have much in it, but they are working up in there. You can see there's quite a few bees in there. And that's where they'll be putting some of the honey. I'm going to put that down here. You always want to keep track of which way the front is. So always face the front is. You don't want to change that around. If you're looking here, we see there's lots of bees. Just notice right here in the center, there's lots of bees. In this side area, they're going to have honey, and then there's a dome inside there, the sideways. So I'll look at it from here. So if we were to cut this in half, we'd see there's like a dome like this that they're starting to work on. Of course, remember this is a swarm hive that I put in there, so they're still getting it into shape. But eventually there'll be a big dome. These are the brood boxes. In this area will be pollen and then honey on the outside, and then all their brood where the young are, and that's where the queen will lay. So we'll be getting ready to see some of that being formed and put together as we go in there. So for this first one, I'm going to smoke them and just move this up here and look in the middle of the hive. I'm not exactly sure where they have decided to, where the queen has decided to do most of her activity. We'll find out here in a second. Some of these older boxes I'll switch out as I get a confirmed swarm that's going to stay around well for me. Now looking in here, it looks like this hive is not near as occupied as that one. But I'm just going to do a quick check here. I'm going to start from the edges and get one frame out. These are ones that were already somewhat made that I gave them to help them get a head start in previous hives. So now I'm going to start working my way across. Not seeing a lot of activity in this lower deck. There's a little bit right here.
I think we need more smoke.
I think we need more smoke. It's probably because my opening's a little bit small. I'm going to open up this opening for them a little bit. You might appreciate that. I'll put the smoker right here so it sort of drifts across while we're working. So look at this one. Sometimes when the bees get ornery, it means you get close to where the queen's hanging out. And there's not very many here doing things, so I'd say the queen is up in that top one. So go ahead and put this back together. Alright, so I put the top back on, this upper one, because that seems to be where they are. I'm going to start over here on the side. We're starting to go in and see if we can find the queen and where they've set up residency. Remember, a lot of this comb is made from other bees. I did that to give them a head start so that they could quickly work on raising young and without spending all their energy making comb. Normally when they swarm, they take as much honey with them as they can to help build their comb. These, you can see this is the outer edge. See all the honey that they're already forming? And we got a good example right here is a male bee. And all he's doing is eating honey. He doesn't do anything other than fertilize queens and eat honey. Doesn't have a, doesn't right here at the tip of my tool. There he is. Notice the big eyeballs as a drone. Doesn't have a stinger. All he has is a reproductive part in place of a stinger. And he just wants to eat honey. And if he mates with a queen eventually, he'll do one mating and that's it. And he will lose that part that's in place of a stinger and he will die. We're going to move from the honey on the outside like I mentioned. This next one should start getting into a combination of honey and brood. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah, they're getting grumpier.
Let me get some better lighting. Yeah, look at all that pollen. I don't know if you can zoom in on that, Dawn. You see it's both a mixture of pollen and honey. A couple big drones. See if you can spot the drones that are quite a bit bigger than the worker bees. Remember, the worker bees are all female. They're all clones of the queen. And so they're the same, except for they weren't given royal jelly, so when they developed and grew up, they did not become a queen. All right, so I'm going to move this back in to the next frame. We want to get into where the eggs are, and when we start getting to where the eggs are being laid, they're usually the queens somewhere wherever the empty cells are and eggs are. Remember, the queen lays about 1,000 eggs a day right now, sometimes even more, especially once the hive gets a little bigger. Looks like we got a queen cell being maybe made on the outside here. Maybe that little extra cell you see coming out. It may just be left over from before, I'm not sure. Not seeing any eggs in here yet.
We did have that old queen before, didn't we?
That was the other one next to us. We're approaching the hot center though. That was empty cells. So they're reserving that for the queen to lay eggs when she gets there. My guess is that this one, which you see lots of bees on, will have eggs in it. And maybe the queen. Yes, there's some larvae here. I don't know if you can look in here. I'm going to gently move some around. There's some young larvae in here. Okay, see the larvae in there? Those are about a week old. Those eggs have hatched and they turn sideways to see if we can find some just regular eggs. Usually they're more on the edges of that area. Yeah, right down in here. You'll have to really zero in the bottom of these cells right here. Can you see the edge of my tool?
Yep.
If you go inside one of those cells as far as you can, you'll see a little tiny white egg. It looks like a exclamation mark, about font size 12. Let's look at this other side. Queen may be over here. Because I know we're in lots of eggs. Lots of drones. Lots of eggs.
That's why they have that cell.
Well, she shouldn't be dead yet, but it wasn't very big. So either she moved on and snuck around somewhere. Let's double check one more time on this side before I put it down in there. Sometimes she hides under a blob of bees. Alright, maybe she's in this next one. Lots of empty cells here with some eggs starting in them. And there's some more eggs in this one, but we've already seen eggs, right?
Yep.
So I know the queen's around here somewhere, though. That's because there's eggs in some of these. Not seeing eggs in these. So she's run somewhere. We just may do some video and cuts until we find her. Hopefully you're familiar with the two types of bees so far, the worker bees and the drone bees. Quite a few of those running around.
A lot of drones.
Yep. Lots of pollen. No queen. No queen there. So as I get ready to put this hive back together, it's hard not to work a hive and not kill a few bees. You squish a few here and there, moving things around you. Try not to. But these bees that are in here, bees are very efficient. They will take those bees that died and they will totally recycle everything they can. They will come and first of all suck all the moisture out of them. all the moisture, any honey, anything they can recycle from that bee, they will. And they'll discard the leftovers out the bottom of the hive eventually. So they're quite efficient. Couldn't find the queen in this one. She's just very elusive for some reason. We're going to try this other hive over here where I know I transferred the queen. Last time I saw her, she actually was a wingless queen. And so we're going to see if we can find her quickly, just so you can see a queen. That hive is again a divide that I did this year. Divided that from a hive about 3 miles from here. And when you divide a hive, you can't just move them next door. You have to move them at least 2 or 3 miles away. Otherwise, the bees will just fly back into the hive. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most efficient divides, that's the way you want to do that. So this hive that we're going to look at came from another little cluster of hives I have about 3 miles from here. Alright, this is a hive, remember that I said I divided. I moved about 5 frames from the hive I divided it from, which is if there's 10 frames to a big box like this. In this one, there's some bees there, but that one looks a little bit busier. Alright, so again, I'm going to work from the outside edge in. If you look at the frames right in the middle, those are the ones that I transferred from the other hive, and then I put other ones to the side. So as we start from the outside, the first ones we're going to see are going to be ones that are just foundation. You'll eventually put comb on that. So that's some artificial foundation. It's actually plastic. Look carefully, you'll see a few of them doing little dances. They're communicating with those dances, talking about honey and communicating different ways. They communicate with their body language. And occasionally you'll see them do little wiggles. Sometimes you can hear a squeak. She'll make a piping sound and go beep, 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 beep. It's like this one right here doing a waggle. Can you see it? He's doing a waggle dance. They're doing, I don't speak in bee language very well, but there she is, right in the middle. Very big old fat thing.
Right, how we find her.
Right there. You see her right there at the end of my tool?
Yeah, she's right in the middle.
You with her now?
Yep.
So you see, she's wingless. She's lost her wings. She's an old queen. So when I divided her, see, so if they made a new queen, she wouldn't even got out of there. She'd just been stung and killed by the new queens. So she was a good one to divide and take out of the old hive.
Trying to keep her in the middle for you.
She's still laying lots of eggs, so she's moved upstairs already. Look right here, Dawn. That's comb that they've made. Can you see it down there? Yep. So they are working hard to please this lady. They're making the comb so she can keep laying. And that was what I sort of hoped to see if we can get her to watch her lay an egg. We watched last week, didn't we? She's checking out the cells. She goes around and makes sure they're all the right size and the right depth. And the length of her abdomen determines the size of the bees, because she will stick that down in the bottom of the cell. And she'll stick it down there, and if it's not deep enough, she'll move on to another one, and they'll have to make it taller. I'm going to put her down in here. I'm afraid I'm going to lose her. So.
There she goes.
Is she going down in?
Yep.
Okay. Trying to be gentle because she's pretty fat and heavy. Going back up. Okay, so we just finished looking at 2 different hives and a couple other ones. Not sure what all we'll edit in here for time's sake, but first one, remember, was a swarm I got recently, about 3 weeks ago, and couldn't find the queen in there. She was doing a good job of hiding. Then the next hive we looked at was one that I actually divided from a hive about the size of this one, but about 3 or 4 miles from here. And I took about 5 frames from that one and took to her queen and brought her here, and we saw she was laying very well, and we finally found her, and so that was good to finally find the queen after lots of looking. So you could see those. This hive here is one that made it through the winter, pretty strong, and that's why I actually took a small divide off this hive and took it over to the other place. And but this one is putting honey into here, and these two are similar to the one you just looked at. Building up pretty strong, lots of brood going on there. This hive, within about a month, will be somewhere between 40 and 60,000 bees in there, and we wouldn't be able to stand here right now a month from now, because, at least not real safely, because the bees will be coming in and out of there at about a rate of about 20 bees a second will be either landing or taking off, so it'll be very busy. So just says enclosure. I'm going to be probably giving you some questions to see what things you may have remembered, but for a little bit of quick review, remember your male bees are the drones. They don't have stingers because their reproductive parts will be used where stingers normally would be in their body. You got the queen. Queen is the main, she's also a female, but she's a fertilized female, and she is laying the eggs at a rate of almost 1,000 eggs a day. Sometimes when the peak of season could be as many as 2,000, in the winter much less. And then you have all the worker bees, which are all clones of the queen, but they weren't fed the special royal jelly that comes from the heads of the worker bees when there's a need for a queen, and so you only have one of those. So there's lots of other things, and hopefully this lets you see some of the things that I do as a hobby. And when I get honey throughout the summer, sort of my summer job, I'll end up putting about 200 hours of summertime into sort of managing my hive.